Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to walk through two surveys that I use with students. The first one at the end of the first quarter and the second one at the end of the semester. These are real surveys that I used with real students. I'm going to talk through why I picked the questions on them and then how I use the information to make adjustments to my courses. I teach computer science, and so you'll see some questions that seem like they refer to computer science, but really they're just referring to the assignments that the students did in my class. In the description, you'll see a link to these specific surveys, and you can just sort of adjust and swap as needed for you to have this be useful for your classroom. So I like to give surveys a lot in my class. I use a lot of different kinds of surveys, all sort of different time frames, but I particularly find these quarter, semester, sort of these big checkpoint ones very important to me when I'm reflecting on my teaching and what I have, what has been successful and what needs improvement in my class. So I tend to start off with questions. The first one's really simple. Are you enjoying this class? And you'll notice that I am using a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek set of questions here. I love this class. This is the worst part of my day. And that's a little bit of my sort of flavor and personality that I have with my students. And I think that's kind of an important thing to think about. This could just be a simple Likert scale, obviously, and maybe that would be a more scientific way to approach this. But I do like to make these feel like they're coming from me. Because I feel like my students give me more honest responses when I'm honestly presenting myself. So my first two questions on this survey with first quarter and a little bit of context is this class was a college, it was a college credit class, a dual credit. And so workload was a really big issue for this class because there's a lot of freshmen, there's a lot of students that this was a huge step up in workload from what they have had in their other classes. And so I was really curious to see how they were dealing with that. And so I wanted to have, a few questions like that. And I wanted to have a thing like I'm overwhelmed and this is kind of bored, too easy. Just to see that there's a wide range of feelings that you can have in this class. Then I mixed in an open-ended question. I really like to use open-ended questions in my survey because I want students to reflect and I want them to think about it, right? When we have, these multiple choice questions, it's really easy to just kind of auto-click on them. Part of the reason I use this kind of silly language is that it makes everybody actually read the questions because it's not just like, I'm just going to click fives all the way down or whatever. They have to actually think about how they answer these. And so here I want to know, how do they describe how they start to work on a new packet? My class is organized in like sort of project packets, which have kind of all of their work for a unit all sort of laid out for them. So it makes it really easy for me to go and ask survey questions about this because, they did a packet and that was a collection of assignments, instruction, all of these things. It's a nice thing for them to reflect on and talk about. So I want them to talk to me about what it is because I want to know a little bit about how they work, what they do. And I left it very open-ended so they could fill it in however they want. Then I had done a new thing for this class where I had made kind of helper videos, that I thought that, and I wanted feedback to see if they were using them, if they thought they were good, if I needed to change the quality, things like that. So I wanted a little bit of their feedback on that. Then the next section is I just went, kind of standard Likert scale sort of stuff, and I just started asking about all of the assignments that they did this quarter. So I just said, hey, packet one, did you enjoy the material? Yes or no? And, to the degree. And then I was asking about the structure because, again, this is something I wanted to know. It's like my reorganization of these packets with the video and things like that, was that making it so that they felt like they could learn it? So we can see here that I have those questions. Then any comments on that packet? And then I just go through all the assignments that they had for this first quarter. So you'll see that they went through, if we keep going, this first quarter, they got through 4 packets. And so then I asked them, do you have any thoughts or questions about the course material? So right here, I'm kind of ending my section on asking about kind of homework problems, tasks, things like that. And I want this again to be another open-ended question so I can get some reflective things. So now my second section is about the environment. I wanted to make sure that my students were feeling like this was a comfortable place for them to learn. Partially because, a lot of these students were new to my program. I wanted to make sure that they were feeling welcome and engaged in the classroom. And so I started off with, I feel comfortable asking questions and making comments in my class. And this is something that I really always am sort of concerned about because, I notice that a lot of times students are reluctant to ask questions or ask for help, even when they think they need it. So I try to be proactive about that, but I want to know their sense of it. So are they not asking questions because they're intimidated or nervous, or are they definitely feel comfortable and they're just not choosing to ask questions? So that's really important. It's another one that I want to know. I'm like, I care a lot that my students feel that I am there to help them succeed. And so I want to be explicit about asking this question. It's another thing where I've spent a lot of time trying to build trust with my students because this is a hard thing to answer. It's another reason that I make sure the survey is anonymous because I don't want somebody to answer and then think I'm going to change my opinion of them for that. So this was a really important question for me because if they don't feel like I care for them, then that's something I can totally change. I can change my attitude. I can go and make some proactive things to make people feel more comfortable. And then similarly, I want to know, is the classroom environment a good place for learning? It's a little bit different than caring about succeeding. This is like, am I paying enough attention to things that are going on? So if people are saying that this doesn't feel like a good place for learning, I might be thinking about my classroom management. I might be thinking about some things like that. And then if this ended up being like sort of particularly poor, then I would probably, sit down and have a meeting with my kids about like, what should I do if this doesn't feel like a good place to learn, and talk about what needs to change to make that a case. And so then find out some more stuff about, what makes them feel comfortable, and there's anything else you'd like to share. Okay, so that's good. And then, basically I had, you can see up here, I have responses, and I have 81 responses. That's almost every kid responded to this, which is pretty good. And the cool part about doing this in Google Forms is that you get, a lot on these things where you pick the multiple choice questions. It kind of picks up into, bar chart form. So I can see right here that, immediately I'm feeling pretty good. Like I got, basically 85% of my kids are saying that they like the class in some way. I do have a couple of kids saying this is the worst part of my day. And, at the time I had a couple of ideas about who those kids might be because I knew they were struggling. But, it's good to collect this data and know that there's some people that aren't enjoying this class. And, it's pretty standard, the 10% of the kids, thing. But I still want to change that and improve. So, but overall, that made me feel pretty good. Okay, then here's the workload. Okay, so this is pretty interesting. So then I see that about a third of the kids, a little more than a third, are saying it's just about perfect, but a lot of kids are saying I'm just barely getting by, and half the kids are saying, I'm barely getting by or I'm feeling overwhelmed. So this definitely goes along with my, overall concern that my class is hard and that doing a dual credit class feels like a lot of work for those students. So that definitely means that I gotta be wary of this. I gotta be careful about the workload that I add to them and sort of the little casual extra things I ask. Also have to make sure that I'm doing a lot of extra support. Okay, so then this is cool. Probably not as interesting to everybody else, but I have a lot of, descriptions of different ways that people go through this. And, some people really focus on the examples. Some people like to watch the video for some things. Learned a lot of stuff about the different ways to do it. Some kids talk about front loading their work, or some people talk about working with their friends. There's a lot of different responses to go through, and I learned a lot about the ways kids work in my class. And so then here you see like on the videos, like, hey, look, some of the kids didn't even watch them. And some of the kids thought they were super useful for me. And, some people are like, I like the videos and the written thing. So this was confirmation to me when I read through all 81 of these that the videos were worth my time to add to the class. They were getting watched. And I could see that, when I looked at my YouTube video views, they were getting hundreds of watches, which means kids were watching them multiple times. And so that felt like, okay, that's a good use of my time. And they took a lot of time to make, so that felt good to have that feedback to decide if I wanted to do that or not. And so then you can get through here, and these are all the packet information, lots of details about it. And so you can see that, some of these packets are more exciting than others. Neutral goes up and down, but overall they're fairly things. But I get little comments like, hey, some of these were irritating. This one was pretty hard for the student, and that makes sense, right? Like packet 4, you can see that people really liked it, but it was there was some challenges in it. You notice that the difficulty ramped up in that packet. Anyways, so then more comments and things, but then we get to the classroom environment stuff. So this stuff was really important for me, and so here is where I got some data that I thought was important for me to review, which was, hey, look, I have students overall. A lot of students are feeling comfortable, but this is about a quarter of my students don't feel as comfortable as I would like about asking questions. And so this really became a focus for me that year. Like, hey, there's, basically 20 kids here that don't feel super comfortable asking for questions. And so then I tried to make a concerted effort to model question asking, be extra supportive, come up with some different ways that people could ask questions. Like we tried using some like kind of Google chat sort of things like that, so kids could ask questions in a little more low stress way than like coming up and talking to it. I got a peer mentor to help with that, and if you look at my survey data at the end of the year, this number went a lot smaller, and so my changes were really successful. But the other part that was kind of cool is, even though like some of these kids don't feel comfortable asking questions, you can see that like a vast majority of my kids really felt like that the teacher cared about them in the class. And so the discrepancy between these two things is like cool. It's like they know that I care. That's great. But they're nervous about talking in class. So that might not have to do specifically with me. It might have to do something with their experience in school. And so like the combination of those two questions was helpful to me. And then here, similarly, the good learning environment, thing. So this again meant it said is I was setting people up for success. And it really made me feel good that I was getting into these things. Again, anonymous survey, but the combination of these three things told me a lot about my students, and I could use that to improve some of the things that I was doing. And so then here, what can a teacher do to make you feel more fun with class? There's a lot of nothings, but there's a lot of other, there's a couple of important notes that people make about ways that could comfort them. So, and then anything else, sometimes the kids just say no, but sometimes they share, pretty big detail, and it's really great. So, and those are all things that can expand. Okay, so that's my first quarter survey. And then I'm going to show my my end of the semester survey, which is slightly different, has a few different things. And this one, I don't have the responses, but that's not quite as relevant for this case. So what's different about the end of the semester survey? In the end of the semester survey, I really like to have it be very reflection focused, because I really want the kids to be thinking about what did they learn through this whole semester, and I want to see what they got out of my class, and it's kind of like a snapshot of their learning and the value this class added for them. So, I do a little bit of demographic information about in this one, which I didn't do in the first one, and part of that is because I want to collect some data in case I am going to talk to the counselors about recruiting, in case I'm going to be applying for a grant or writing a proposal or something. Having a little bit of this data on hand seemed pretty useful to me. And then I have, you'll see, I have the worst part of the day. Yes, I love this class. And I moved over to a Likert scale since I had already done this other one, they kind of knew what I meant by this question. So I could condense it a little bit here. So then how much did you learn in this class? My brain is full and not much. I just wanted to say, do you feel like you grew in this class, right? And then this was really important for me at the end of the semester because it's the beginning of forecasting season, right? And I want to know, are people going to recommend this class to their friends? And, I put in no way, yes, but only to certain friends, and yes, everybody would like their class. Now, if I was going to do this again, I might actually put in like an open-ended question after this where I ask them to explain, if you said, choice 2 here, tell me about the friends you might recommend this to. And so, I think for the data for this, it was I had very few no ways. And then I had a pretty even split between these two, which, I think was good and bad. It's like some people really felt like this was, for certain people, and some people were like, oh my gosh, everybody should be in this class. So that was nice. Then I wanted to do some comparison stuff. How does this compare to other classes you took this year? And then do you feel the amount of work asked of you matched up to the time given in class? Because I was definitely really concerned about workload, especially after that first semester meant people were or first quarter, people were like, wow, I'm barely hanging on. And so I wanted to see if my adjustments had made good sense. And so, what I found out was that, a lot of kids were kind of in this one and this one. And so I definitely, dialed back the work, and I found a couple of problems that were like maybe a little bit redundant. And so I was kind of maybe over covering a couple of standards, and I clipped those out. And then this got better over a couple of years, which was great. So then I wanted to find out about, what kind of stuff do they like? Do they want more focus on working? Do they want me talking more? Do they want more, examples, things like that. So this was kind of a question to get at that. Again, I kind of went back to the videos to see if those still felt helpful. And then I made a second set of videos that I tried, as a new thing I kind of tried out, called Code-alongs. And so this was like sort of a second quarter, like little bonus thing that I did. So I just was trying to find out a question of like, did you use this support? And then I had another little thing I tried out, which is I had some optional reading, and I was curious who read the optional reading. And so that was interesting. It was something that I think the people that did read it really benefited them, but not everybody did. So I was curious to hear about that and got some feedback from them. And then just some thoughts about them, about the videos again. And then we get into, tell me about these packets that you thought were sort of interesting. And so we do the same thing, except for we did the whole semester's worth of packets. So there's 8 packets for the whole semester. They click on these, they talk about them exactly like we did before. But the thing that is different here is to see, it's because it's how I have it selected here. This is a multiple select. What I get in the results is that I get like how many people found this one interesting. So if everybody clicks on this, I get 80 responses saying number 4 was a good packet. And so I kind of get this like volume kick about which are sort of my best activities. So in this case, my number 6 activity was the most popular one. Almost everybody clicked that one as being a good one. And then which one was found, particularly frustrating, maybe unsurprisingly, like one of these ones at the end, felt a little bit more frustrating. And that gave me some insight about how to reteach and reorganize these packets for future years. So then I just have them do a bunch of reflections. So now we get into kind of open-ended thing. What have you enjoyed about this class? And I really want them to put 2 things, right? Like think carefully about the 2 things. And hey, what's something you might change? And then what are 2 things you can do to get more out of the class? And so this is again a reflection to be like, did you use your time well in this class? Even if you did, like, hey, you could always get a little bit more. And then just a direct forecasting question. And then a little question about, if you sign up for this class next year, which aspect of the next course is most interesting to you? And so for me, that's super helpful because I'm in the process of revising the 5-6 course as I'm giving out this survey. So I'm taking the feedback from the current 5-6 students and taking the feedback here so that when I am doing some lesson planning and adjusting things, I can be keeping track, not just the students that I have this year, but the potential students that I have the following year. And so those are the goals between these two surveys. So again, I'll put links to these in the documents so you can grab them and steal them. My suggestion would be to, keep a lot of the sort of general questions and then swap in your own activities and teaching strategies and things that you want to do. But hopefully this gives you a good place to start. Cheers. Bye.